Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Authorities in Volusia County, Florida say that an angry young woman's plans to get revenge on an ex-boyfriend backfired spectacularly this week after she was not only caught in the act, but she also ended up making a massive mistake. The whole thing began sometime in the early morning hours of February 26th when Volusia County Police interrupted 18-year-old Evelina Fabianski and a 16-year-old accomplice while they were in the middle of vandalizing a vehicle. The pair of teens were in a residential area of the city of Deltona where they had allegedly covered a black Infiniti sedan with eggs and yellow spray paint. According to reports, the whole thing was part of a revenge plot against Fabianski's ex-boyfriend, who lived on the street in question. I'm going to assume the man's name is Jason, since this was one of the things spray painted onto the vehicle, along with smiley faces and other random words, including devil. Apparently, Fabianski was mad because Jason owed her $700. The thing is, though, Fabianski had made a pretty big mistake. You see, this wasn't Jason's car. The vehicle reportedly belonged to another random resident on the street. If this wasn't bad enough, when police caught Fabianski and her 16-year-old accomplice, they were in possession of a whole bunch of open alcohol and more than 20 grams of marijuana. Since Fabianski was driving, that means that on top of other charges she is now facing, she was also slapped with a DUI. In body cam footage, police seem genuinely baffled by the teen's stupidity. At one point, an officer tells the suspects, quote, "You really need to try harder and to try to be sneaky because you're god-awful."
You guys spray painted the wrong damn car. Yeah, it's that neighbor's car.
According to reports, Fabianski has now been charged with criminal mischief, contributing to the delinquency of a child, illegal possession of alcohol, and of course, DUI. Her 16-year-old accomplice, who claimed not to be involved despite being covered in yellow paint, was cited for marijuana possession.
Representatives from the U.S. Marshal Service say that a dangerous fugitive is finally behind bars this week, more than 40 years after he was accused of bombing a house, a crime that nearly led to his ex-wife's death. The whole thing began one day back in 1982, when then 33-year-old Stephen Craig Campbell allegedly left a toolbox rigged with explosives on the front doorstep of his ex-wife's boyfriend's house in Sweetwater County, Wyoming. After spotting the toolbox, Campbell's ex-wife unwittingly opened it up. The resulting blast ripped off one of her fingers and sent shrapnel flying everywhere. It also started a fire that destroyed the house as well as a neighboring residence. Campbell was quickly linked to the crime and arrested and charged with attempted first-degree murder. However, while awaiting trial, he was granted bail. As soon as he was released, he disappeared. A warrant was issued for Campbell's arrest, and his name was soon added to the U.S. Marshal's most wanted list. However, for decades, no trace of him could be found. Authorities now say that's because in 1984, he stole the identity of a former classmate named Walter Lee Kaufman. Campbell and Kaufman attended the University of Arkansas together, though Kaufman had died shortly after graduating in 1975. After successfully applying for a passport under Kaufman's name, but using his own photos, Campbell was able to obtain other pieces of identification in multiple states. He eventually moved to the town of Weed, New Mexico, where he bought a 44-acre compound using his fraudulent identity. The scheme worked perfectly for many years, and Campbell was even apparently able to obtain more than $140,000 in Social Security benefits. It wasn't until 2019 that things finally started to unravel. According to reports, after renewing his New Mexico driver's license with a passport under Kaufman's name, agents from the National Passport Center's Fraud Prevention Unit noticed some inconsistencies. They began investigating, and after some time, they were able to uncover the fraud. It wasn't until they finally got to the bottom of everything, though, that they realized the person behind the crime was actually a dangerous wanted fugitive. A couple of weeks ago, on February 19th, a team comprised of U.S. Marshals, the FBI, and local law enforcement agencies raided Campbell's New Mexico property. When they arrived, he reportedly grabbed a scoped rifle and took up a concealed and elevated position, refusing to cooperate. Fortunately, after deploying flashbang devices, authorities were able to end the situation without any shots being fired. It's a good thing, too, as Campbell's weapon was apparently loaded with high-powered rounds capable of piercing body armor. A further search of the property reportedly turned up a cache of nearly 60 weapons and much more ammunition. Now that Campbell is finally in custody, officials say that he will be facing federal fraud charges in New Mexico. He could be facing up to 10 years in prison for these crimes alone, but after these court proceedings, he is expected to be returned to Wyoming, where he will stand trial in the original 1982 bombing case.
Authorities in the city of Monroe, North Carolina say that a 52-year-old woman is facing serious charges this week following a disturbing incident in which she allegedly trapped her boyfriend in a storage unit for days without food or water. The nightmarish situation began sometime on February 20th when the suspect, 52-year-old Robin Renee Deaton, went to a storage facility with the unidentified male victim on the 1900 block of Old Charlotte Highway. At some point while they were there, the couple reportedly got into an argument. That's when Deaton allegedly asked her boyfriend to get something for her from the back of the unit. When he did as she asked, she locked him inside, telling him, quote, "That's what you get," before leaving him there entirely. It wasn't until 5 days later, on February 25th, that anyone figured out what had happened. That's when the male victim finally managed to find his cell phone in the dark and crowded unit and used it to call for help. Here's part of the man's harrowing 911 call.
I've been locked in the storage unit for about a week now, and I just now found my phone. She double locked my lock, and I don't know how she put me in here, but she put me in here. I just need out of here. I just can't breathe. I haven't had nothing to drink or anything.
Thankfully, police were able to respond to the scene quickly after the man's call for help. He was taken to a local hospital to be treated for dehydration and has since been released. If you're wondering why it took so long for the man to be able to call for help, apparently the storage unit he was in was quite packed with items, and it took him a long time to find his phone in the pitch-black mess. Police referred to the container as a, quote, hoarder's paradise type situation, stating that things started falling out of the unit as soon as they responded to the scene and opened it up. As for Robin Deaton, she was quickly tracked down and arrested after all of this. While the victim seems to have been incredibly charitable to her, saying he's not sure if she left him there on purpose, police see the situation very differently. A spokesperson for the Monroe Police Department stated, quote, "We believe that she truly intended for him to die in that storage unit with no food and no water, no outside source of anything. She knew she locked him in there and never went back to check on him." They also speculated that the man might be a victim of ongoing domestic violence. Deaton is now facing charges of first-degree kidnapping and attempted first-degree murder.
Authorities in Princeton, New Jersey say that they are working to piece together the details of a deeply unsettling crime this week after a man allegedly murdered his younger brother and a family pet inside of a luxury apartment building. The whole thing began just after 11:15 p.m. on February 22nd when 911 dispatchers received a call about a fire and a dead body at a property on Michelle Mews. When officers arrived at the high-end apartment and condo complex, which is located just minutes away from Princeton University, they were met by a disturbing scene. Inside a unit there was the body of 26-year-old Joseph Hurtgen. Joseph had suffered apparent lacerations as well as blunt force trauma. Disturbingly, a dead cat was also located inside the residence, which had reportedly been set on fire. Attention quickly turned to Joseph's older brother, 31-year-old Matthew Hurtgen. Matthew was apparently the person who had called 911 that night and was also inside the property when police arrived. Investigators now allege that Matthew killed his brother and the pet cat with a knife and golf club. Unfortunately, that's not all though. Police say that when Joseph's body was found, he was missing one of his eyes. A bloody knife, plate, and fork near the body led them to conclude that Matthew had likely consumed the body part before they arrived. According to reports, the Hurtgen brothers came from a wealthy family and grew up in the town of Toms River. The siblings were both soccer stars at their local high school and had each gone on to play in college at Wesleyan University and the University of Michigan. While very few details have been released about what actually unfolded in the family's high-end apartment that night, what we do know is that authorities are investigating whether Matthew may have been suffering some kind of mental health breakdown prior to the crime. In the months leading up to the horrifying incident, he reportedly posted incredibly unsettling and graphic poetry to his Facebook profile. Some of that poetry included descriptions of blood oozing out of eyes and, quote, knives sharpening. The 31-year-old also posted a now chilling image of himself just the day before the killing, showing himself lying on the floor next to a cat toy. After being taken into custody, Matthew was charged with first-degree murder and animal cruelty, as well as related weapons offenses. Following his first court appearance this week, he reportedly tried to take his own life in the jail cell where he was being held, though staff at the facility figured out what was going on in time. According to local media, other than a 2017 drunk driving arrest and a few traffic tickets, Matthew Hurtgen had never been in trouble with the law before this week. So far, no motive behind the crime has been confirmed, and the situation is still under investigation.
Authorities in the city of Keene, New Hampshire say that a young woman is facing charges this week following the discovery of a revolting series of crimes in which she allegedly urinated on food products at a local grocery store where she was employed. According to police, the whole thing started on February 14th when they were contacted by a concerned member of the public. The anonymous tipster alerted them to a young woman who seemed to be specializing in a rather unique and stomach-churning form of content creation. In short, she was making videos of herself secretly pissing on items at the grocery store where she worked. After launching an investigation, police were able to identify the woman as 23-year-old Kelly Tedford. Through this, they were also able to determine that the store in question was the Monadnock Food Co-op, where she was an employee. Upon passing along the unfortunate and disgusting news to the store's management, the company estimated they incurred roughly $1,500 in costs between cleaning expenses and ruined products that Tedford is accused of contaminating. However, it's unclear if this figure also factors in a recall they were also forced to do because of the incident. The co-op reportedly issued an alert to customers, advising them they were recalling organic quinoa, cornmeal, polenta, coconut shreds, and raw walnuts, all items which Tedford presumably gave the golden shower treatment to as well. As if all of this weren't bad enough, apparently the 23-year-old's proclivities weren't limited to her place of employment. Police say they are still investigating Tedford's trove of videos, which appear to show her peeing on produce, surfaces, and other objects in a number of other locations in multiple communities. These videos allegedly date back as far as 2021. Tedford was arrested on February 21st and is currently facing a charge of criminal mischief. However, authorities have stated that more charges are possible as the investigation continues.
Representatives from Colorado's Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office say that one suspect has been arrested this week, but that they are currently searching for at least 3 others, following a bizarre and brazen robbery at a local pet store in which a thief faked a medical emergency so that accomplices could steal puppies. The whole thing unfolded on the afternoon of February 23rd at Perfect Pets in the Denver suburb of Centennial. According to reports, the incident began at around 1:30 p.m. when 3 male suspects entered the business. The men came in separately, all posing as legitimate customers. As they pretended to browse, one of them suddenly fell to the floor. The man, later identified as 37-year-old Timothy Davis Jr., began faking a seizure, drawing the attention of employees and other customers. Surveillance footage shows a small crowd of people gathered around Davis as one of the 2 other men begins walking towards the back of the store. The man can be seen reaching into one of the pens where the business's puppies are kept, snatching 2 tiny English bulldogs before heading for the exit. Though staff caught on to what was happening and tried to stop the thieves, even tackling the suspect with the puppies and causing him to momentarily drop them, 2 of the suspects managed to take the animals to a waiting gold Cadillac Escalade with a 4th suspect inside before speeding off. Unfortunately for Davis, he got left behind and was arrested as soon as police arrived at the scene. He is now facing multiple charges, including conspiracy to commit a felony, theft, and drug possession. Despite this, it seems Davis has refused to turn in his accomplices, as their identities still remain unknown at the time of this recording. Police have described the 2 other men who went into the store as a black male who was wearing a large black coat and sweatpants, and a white or Hispanic male who was wearing a blue and white beanie-style hat and had brown hair. No description of the 4th suspect has been released, but authorities say they believe they are looking for a female. As for the puppies, one of them has since been recovered, thanks to the actions of a Good Samaritan. A woman who later purchased one of the bulldogs in Denver for $1,500 brought the animal back to the pet store after learning about what had happened on the news. Sadly, though, the other puppies' whereabouts are still unknown. The crime has come as an especially hard blow to Perfect Pets, as employees there say this is the 3rd robbery they've had to put up with this month alone. In another incident a couple weeks ago, 2 women came in with their babies and used strollers to smuggle puppies out of the store. Neither of those 2 dogs has been recovered. A few days before that, someone tried to take off with a boxer puppy, but they were chased down and stopped. Sadly, as animals like these have surged in price over the past few years, they have increasingly become the targets of opportunistic thieves. The bulldogs in this week's incident, for example, were apparently being sold for just under $4,300 each. At the time of this recording, the situation is still under investigation, and anyone with information is asked to reach out to the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office.
Authorities in Provo, Utah released an awful update in the case of a missing woman this week, announcing that her body had been found under chilling circumstances and that her former boyfriend has now been arrested and charged with her murder. According to reports, the case began on December 26, 2024, when Lisa Hyde was reported missing by worried family members. This was followed up about a month later by a bulletin put out by the Springville Police Department, which noted that Lisa still had not been found. That changed on February 23rd when police in Provo got a disturbing 911 call. It was from a man who said that someone he knew, 53-year-old Arturo Carrion, had admitted to killing his former girlfriend and hiding her in a shed. The caller also gave them an address of an apartment where Carrion was known to be staying. When police arrived at the scene around 4:30 p.m., they noticed there were 2 metal sheds on the property. When they spoke to Carrion, he initially told them they belonged to someone else and that the tenants at his apartment building didn't have access to them. However, when Carrion's mother showed up, she contradicted this and told him to hand over the keys. As officers made their way into one of the sheds, they were immediately hit with a foul odor that they recognized as decomposition. Moments later, they spotted a black nylon bag. Inside was the body of a woman. Sadly, it would later be revealed that these were Lisa's remains. According to charging documents, quote, the female had her hands bound behind her back with black wire, and there was a black plastic bag over her head, and with a thick strap wrapped tightly around her neck. An autopsy noted that Lisa had bruising on her thighs, shoulders, arms, and chest. Her sternum was broken, as were several of her teeth. Carrion was arrested at the scene and is now facing charges of murder, abuse, or desecration of a dead body. While no official motive has been released at this time, reports state that Carrion had been arrested for domestic violence about a month before Lisa's murder. Sadly, it's said that she leaves behind 2 children.
Authorities in the city of Jeffersonville, Indiana, say that a 34-year-old man is facing charges following an awful incident 2 weeks ago in which his wife was brutally murdered inside their home, a crime he allegedly committed in part because he was unhappy with her reaction to the Valentine's Day date he had planned for them. The whole thing began late on the night of February 14th when Jeffersonville police were called to a residence on the 6600 block of Westwood Drive with reports of a violent incident. A male caller told 911 dispatchers that he had reason to believe that one of the people that lived there, 36-year-old Deborah Meyer, was in serious danger and was being attacked by her 34-year-old husband, Taylor. When officers arrived at the scene, they got no response at the door. After forcing their way in, however, they came face-to-face with Taylor Meyer, who was apparently aggressive and uncooperative. The 34-year-old had to be physically restrained, but was eventually taken into custody. Unfortunately, that was just the beginning of what police would find inside, though. While searching the rest of the home, they found Deborah lying dead on the floor. She had been beaten and horrifically stabbed roughly 40 times. Deborah and Taylor's 3 children, all of whom are under the age of 5, were inside the house as well, though thankfully they were physically unharmed. Upon being taken in for questioning, Taylor reportedly offered a full and chilling accounting of the events of that evening. He said that it had all started when he planned a Paris-themed Valentine's Day evening for him and Deborah. According to Taylor, after seeing a photo of his wife holding hands with someone else in January, he had come to suspect that she was having an affair with one of her coworkers. As a result, he had organized this Valentine's Day event as a last-ditch effort to fix the relationship. The evening included Taylor ordering dinner, buying Deborah a new dress, and having their kids draw pictures of the Eiffel Tower. He said that he also gave his wife a handwritten card and that they had danced to their wedding song. He told investigators, quote, "It was the hardest I've ever tried." However, Taylor explained that the night had turned sour when he felt that Deborah was distant and that, quote, "she just didn't give a shit." They began arguing, and he said that she left the house for about 20 minutes. He stated he believed that during this time, she met up with her boyfriend, and that this enraged him because, quote, "For the last 2 months, I've been staying home with the kids every Saturday night while she goes out and whoever and lies to my face about it." After Deborah returned, Taylor said that he attempted to confront her and demanded to see her phone. When she refused, their argument turned physical, and they began wrestling over the device. During the altercation, Taylor said that Deborah punched him, but he managed to overpower her. At various times, he choked her, hit her in the head with a wine bottle, and pinned her to the ground, all while continuing to go through her phone. He stated that Deborah kept asking him, quote, "What are you going to do? Kill me? You're going to hurt me and leave our kids with no parents?" At one point, while Taylor said he was sitting on top of Deborah, he called the man that he believed she was having an affair with. She began screaming for help, so he went back to choking her and beating her until she was unconscious. That's when he grabbed what he referred to as, quote, "a big kitchen knife," stabbing Deborah dozens of times until she was dead. As if things couldn't get any more sickening, when this was all over, Taylor confessed that he'd taken a picture of his wife's dead body and sent it to her alleged lover. He included a message along with it that simply said, quote, "Your fault." Finally, he texted a family group chat informing others what he had done. All of this reportedly happened while the 3 Meyer children were asleep upstairs in their beds. According to reports, Taylor Meyer is now facing murder charges and remains in custody. He's expected to go to trial sometime in July. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.